All right, we got everyone. All right, so I know we went a little long. Expected that. There's a lot going on. I got to tell you, when I got to meet Reese a couple of years ago, it was one of these where you wanted to never leave because every topic led into another topic and continued on and on and on. He knows everything. And when he suggested he wanted to speak, he came down from Singularity University, which of course Peter Diamandis, who's here, and Marina Del Rey, and Ray Kurzweil put together. It's a blessing. It's awesome. So I want us all to put our hands up and bring Reese Jones up, and thank you for hanging out with us.
It's good. It's good. Hi, my name's Reese, and you've heard from a number of my coworkers and friends, Peter Diamandis and Salim Ismail and Daniel Kraft and Stephen Kotler, and so I think some of you will be familiar with some of the stuff that I'm going to talk about. I thought what we would do is go at a rather high speed, at a high altitude, across what are singularities, life, death, existential angst, and moving matter and synthetic biology, and not lose anybody, hopefully. So if you want to remember one thing from this talk, is that there are many singularities. There's not one. And the singularity is a term that comes from math and physics from over 100 years ago in a solution to Einstein's equations for time-space that predicted something that was a singularity point that was figured out mathematically around 1916 and observed almost 100 years later as black holes. But singularities also affect you personally. So I'm going to try and touch on some of these sort of areas of how what a singularity is and how it will affect you, and how that exponential change into unpredictability is something that's not just an abstract theory, but it actually can be personal. So how many of you follow me on Facebook? A few. So there's a lot of information about this on Facebook over the last several years that Peter Diamandis and Ray Kurzweil co-founded Singularity University, which is hosted at NASA in Silicon Valley, where I serve as a trustee. And the main purpose of Singularity University is to train the next generation of leaders, cross-training them in advancing technologies that are changing at an exponential rate, and hoping to get those applied to solving problems that affect 1 billion people within 10 years. And that's their project, living and working and eating on the NASA campus for 10 weeks in the summer, or executive programs for a week long. And how many people have been to an executive program? So a few also. So most of you are pretty familiar with this material, so I'll go through it quickly. So as I mentioned, singularities is something from math and physics, and STEM is space, time, energy, and matter, and a singularity point is a place where those formulas that predict how those things work in regular life cease to predict accurately what happens to them. So singularity basically means change. You can see this is an actual image from the Hubble of a black hole in space, which appears to be like a drain in a sink, but it's basically in the center, a place where the gravity is strong enough that the mass of light can't escape, so it looks like a black hole in a cluster of stars that are falling into the black hole. It's thought that at the center of most all galaxies are these black holes. In fact, they may be the attractor that creates galaxies out of the dust into stars. This is an image of our own galaxy with Earth's trajectory, and the field of view of the Kepler telescope that's looking for other habitable planets, you can see is quite small in the scope of this galaxy, of which there are billions of galaxies. So where singularity comes from is this heritage of cosmology and physics and math and so forth, but they also exist in our personal lives here on Earth. And how many people have seen something like this before? So this is, some people refer to it as a glory hole. This one's in Lake Berryessa in Northern California, and it is a singularity in that the water is moving exponentially faster as it goes closer to this hole, and what happens to that water inside there is unpredictable. And the normal laws of your frame of reference, or if you were swimming around in this lake nearby this hole, you would have a normal expectation of how your swimming would go, unless you came next to the edge of that hole and fell over the event horizon into the hole. What would happen to you would be quite unpredictable. So to give you a sense of what these things look like, turn it down a little. So the water doesn't disappear into nothingness. It actually goes somewhere. So there is a conservation of water, in that case, mass and energy. And that happens in black holes and singularities in general, in theory. So this is an example of basically a spillway in a dam. But it's also a real-life example of singularity and an exponential hole that you might actually fall into. These are observed in space, where on this side are observed galaxies and the observed black hole. Hawking has a concept of Hawking radiation, which is one theory about what happens to the energy of the mass that sucks into a black hole, is that it comes out in orthogonal directions at high energy. And this is, people are searching for this and partly observing it maybe. Another theory of what happens inside a singularity is that it's actually a big bang for somebody else. So much like that water falling through the hole and coming out somewhere else, the matter falling into a singularity might be a big bang for somebody else, and we might be in somebody else's black hole. And so the evolution of this is obviously not easy to understand or well understood or easy to test. But a more personalized example of a singularity as it relates to our human's daily existence. So here's the water. Now here's people approaching the edge of an event horizon and playing around with it as if it's not hazardous or normal. And so it's singularities are scary to real people, and they're found in many parts of life. So they're quite confident that nothing will happen. And so other people look at these singularity points from a different point of view and say, well, what if I were to go over that thing? What would it be like? So here's somebody actually trying it in a kayak. So right now it's become unpredictable what happens to him. Does he die? Does he live? Is he broken? He's gone into over event horizon into a singularity exponentially.
Where are you, buddy? Where are you, buddy? Oh, he's out, he's in his boat! Yeah!
So trying it again. So this is what it feels like experiencing a singularity in your life. Now you've heard about the white light of death. That waterfall was around 180 feet, which is the largest in the second 2/3.
I apologize.
Okay. So singularities are complex, they're unpredictable. The main take-home point of this talk is there are more than one kind of singularity. Another kind, besides black holes, besides waterfalls, is an example of heart attacks and death, or not death. And these are chaos theory, mathematical models, and complexity theory about how heart attacks work and the time between beats of your heart. And the time between beats of your heart is normally within between 0 and 4 minutes of time. But if it happens for just randomly to be more than 4 minutes, well, you might die. If it happens to be close to 0, same thing. And that's experienced as a heart attack. And a heart attack is a singularity in terms of your reference of life, where the thing that you're doing sitting here right now, your normal stuff, you're worried about your milk in the fridge and whatever bank things and friends and so forth. In a few seconds after you have a heart attack, everything about your reality changes. Your ability to breathe, your ability to stand, your ability to think. You might die, you might get resuscitated, you might recover completely normally, or you might recover incapacitated for the rest of your life. And so this is an event going across an event horizon into an unpredictable chaos where the model of your life, or the framework of which you reference things, whether it's mathematics or physics or just daily life, changes in unpredictable way. And it turns out there's a lot of things in our personal lives that are like this. Heart attacks, strokes, trauma in a car crash, same thing, where you can be going along perfectly normally, leaving here, and you have a 1 in 1,200 chance of being in a car wreck within the next week, you personally, in the United States. And that car wreck may or may not have an injury, but it can change your life in an instant. Birth and changing into life, what kind of life is that going to be after the moment of birth? What happens as you approach death multiple times, or the final time, or the concept of ego, of yourself being separate from others, and what happens when you can get through the path of dissolving that ego. We have one expert in the room on orgasm. And orgasm is another example of going across a threshold or going over the edge into an unpredictable neurological state where how you will feel for those few seconds or moments is unpredictable. But it's an example of a state change to how you model the world in reality. Other examples in economics, for example, the price elasticity of energy in given supply, it can go from a very predictable model to an unpredictable model, where on the left is a chart of the energy price in Russia when they discovered an unlimited supply, and then they didn't know what to set the price at. It became unpredictable. Or how much you set a tax in a country. Setting a tax above a certain threshold, and for an unknown complex set of reasons, will cause people either to leave the country or stop working or stop producing or stop innovating. But it's been pretty clearly proven around the world that if you tax beyond a certain threshold, you get into an unpredictable phenomenon of people's reaction. So singularities relate to money. As mentioned earlier, Facebook stock and the Facebook IPO. On Facebook's IPO day, there was a singularity point right after Facebook stock trading, and Facebook was trading in controlled trading, where many people wanted to short it and dump it, but couldn't because it was controlled. But they did. The automatic trading systems that control the trading of Zynga automatically kicked in and said, dump Zynga. And there was a flash crash in Zynga stock moments after the Facebook IPO started trading, in which case the circuit breakers shut in, the blue arrow there, it shuts down the automated AI trading systems, which then they stabilize the stock at one price. And so that is a singularity point, both all those straight corners. And when they turn back on the trading, they don't know what's going to happen. It's unpredictable by economics, by human behavior, by history. However, this is what happens, and the unpredictability is resolved in litigation. Another example of a singularity that is commonly talked about by Ray and Peter and a number of people is the intelligence of computers becoming smarter than people. And this has been happening over the last 100 years. And computers are getting better, or technology is getting better at humans at very particular tasks. Like, for example, airplanes are much better at flying than humans are. And they keep getting better at flying than humans do. And humans have never been particularly good at flying, but it's not something that's necessarily humans' optimal thing. And computers are very good at certain things, but they're not good at everything. They're rather good at trading stocks. They're rather good at playing chess. They've now become very good at Jeopardy, which was thought until a year ago to be an intrinsically human type of game. But now the computers are getting facile enough with human language and knowledge to be able to succeed against the two best Jeopardy players ever, in this case. Now, it doesn't mean that the computer is smarter than these people. It doesn't mean it's a better date. It just means that it can answer Jeopardy questions better than those people. And it wasn't completely successful in that the humans actually won some money relative to the computer. Another character who's explored this concept using different language from a different time is Timothy Leary, who died before the internet was really called the internet, still the ARPANET at the time. But he had a chart that he made before he died that I find very interesting, which is the realities processed per day. So in hunter-gatherer village life, the number of realities without technology that a typical human would be exposed to is very few. Maybe rumors from the next village or distant lands or fantasies or stories or that sort of thing. But with the advent of books and followed by electronic technologies, TVs, PCs, and so forth, and then the internet, the number of realities, like watching a reality TV show or seeing a story in a different language or such things, the number of those per day that we have access to is expanding at a sort of very fast exponential rate. Now, what happens if these things are expanding into realities that are in dimensions that we're not really conscious of or not paying attention to? And this is explored sort of in the movie 2001, where there's a concept of a higher intelligence that is in the presence of regular human intelligence, but what happens is unpredictable. And other people had a view of how that was going to go too, in that Steve's concept of how to present the window into the dimensional reality of the internet was presented in a very similar perspective. Ray Kurzweil has done some projection as to how the evolution of consciousness progresses from essentially physics and chemistry through biology to biological thinking brains to adding technology, then integrating, merging of biological technology and computer technology, such as us with phones, and then the Earth waking up and the universe waking up. So I put a little "you are here" or "we are here" on the map as to where we are in this evolution of consciousness. Some thinking beyond this curve of the universe waking up as conscious is John Smart's work on something called the Transclension hypothesis, which deals with Fermi's paradox, which is a question about why is it that we can't see advanced civilizations or technologies in other parts of the universe. And that may well be because as civilizations advance or life forms advance into more and more complexity, they can expand outward like we're doing now with space and radio waves and radars and TV going out into space in an energy disequilibrium, or it can fold inward like meditation, the internet, or internal folding, where things can become increasingly complex but smaller, quieter, more efficient, and disappear. And so just as the internet itself is getting more complex, the focus from the physical world into the electronic dimension is something that becomes increasingly invisible from afar. And the internet may well be a conscious dimension that we're just unconscious about that. And people exploring meditation are also similarly exploring an inward view of inner space like outer space. So to sort of quickly summarize, how does this apply to everyday stuff? There's an exponential change that's going on in the human population. If we've added 6 billion people in the last 100 years or so, and the world was running kind of just fine with 1 billion people, and so the extra 6 billion people actually don't really have to do anything. That they're here, and disasters, the statistics of disasters are much larger because there's more people around to be involved in disasters. And our brain is amplified, as Peter points out in his abundance book. Our brain is tuned to hear bad news and pay attention to disaster at least 3 to 5 times more than pay attention to good news. And so some good news in an exponential way is our ability to solve problems is improving on this price-performance curve in ways that can be leveraged towards addressing these crises as people see them. So I think you've heard about the common way to describe a singularity is if you take linear steps, 1, 2, 3 to 30, you would be 30 steps away. If you took exponential steps, which is 1 and then double and then 4, 8, 16, 32, and so on, by the time you get to 30, you'd be over 1 billion steps, which is several times around the world. And that's very counterintuitive how that exponential scale goes up, unless you think about, well, how many movies can you store on your phone, which is a practical experience of exponential capability. So I'll briefly touch on 4 case studies of smarter transport, internet as physical matter, internet as virtual matter, and then synthetic biology. Matter, when it's moving, can be thought of from an information theory point of view, and both transporting or virtual. So with these 7 billion people, about half of them live in megacities, and there's congestion and difficulty moving things around. So this is a problem that needs to be addressed. The linear approach to the problem, which is building roads and vehicles to move things around one at a time, is congested and not working anymore. So by adding intelligence to the packets that move on this network is a way that some of the exponential capabilities can actually improve the situation. If you notice on this picture, these people in these cars may perceive as there being some traffic or light traffic, but if you look at it from above, the road is virtually empty, and for each one of those cars in the city of Los Angeles, there's more than 2 available parking spaces dedicated to cars that are empty because the car's on the road. So from a sort of a astrobiology point of view, our use of cars driven by humans on roads and parking places is extremely inefficient and could be made approximately 10 times more efficient, maybe more, by just making the cars smarter and packing them more densely. So this was, when you add 2 different exponential trends together, you can get a multiplying effect. So adding the exponential ability of the phones and internets to smarter cars, this was a project at Singularity University in 2009 where the billion people problem was conceived of with the autonomous cars, and you just use your phone to say, I need a car right now. It appears for you, it takes you where you want to go, and then it leaves. And you don't have to worry about who owns it, where it gets gas, who pays for it, who maintains it, that kind of thing. And it can park itself, it can run in higher density, you can use the existing infrastructure. We don't need high-speed rail, we don't need a lot of these things because you just use smarter cars to use the existing roads, fuels, and so forth, and you can actually get maybe 1 or 2 orders of magnitude efficiency improvement, sort of a billion people problem solution, just by making things a little bit smarter. Now, from a concept, a theoretical concept, into a practical entrepreneurial problem is a startup, a billion people within 10 years is a bit of an optimistic goal, and that's the goal we have the Singularity teams do. But for some of these team projects turn into companies, and if you take a billion people solution and scale it back by a factor of 1,000 to a million people solution, and how would you get to a billion people? Well, it's pretty hard. Facebook's not even there yet. It's 10 years old. But a million people is quite doable. And so with the minor modification of the student project into sharing your own car with your own phone, created an actual company that became viable, funded, and is commercially going in half a dozen different cities where you can offer your car to share, or you can look on your phone for a map of cars that you can choose to drive. So the congestion is still these car problems. Even if they become more efficient, they create new problems of congestion using roads and so forth. One of the other problems is most of the world has no roads, and so people's classical solution to that is rather linear and doesn't expand with capacity. However, the number of people is expanding, and how to deal with that particular kind of problem of moving matter around, moving people around, and moving biology around is something that applying different kinds of thinking, like internet thinking, to solving. So an internet packet is taking some piece of data like a movie, breaking it into little pieces. The little pieces are information that are put in envelopes and sent around the network. Traditionally, they go through routers. Routers traditionally were a hybrid biological electronic device that was made up of humans and machines packed in a building. Now a router can fit in your hand easily. The capabilities of the routers making the decisions is going by Moore's law exponentially, and the ability to send the packets over the network is also going exponentially by Marty Cooper's law, who invented the cell phone. But moving matter as information technology type thinking gives different ways of thinking about the problem of how do you move things around that can become exponential. So instead of putting data in the packet, if you make a packet that is composed of matter, you can address problems like those places where there are roads that are impassable. You could try something like the shredder outside, but the approach that was taken by the team last summer at Singularity was somewhere between a terrestrial vehicle and a helicopter that is smart and autonomous, which created into a network like an internet, creating basically a Matternet. So this is packets that move, and you sort of wonder, can these things actually do what's expected as autonomous packets? So these are just flying actual real live vehicles that can be that are smart, they're autonomous, they can carry packets, they can carry information, they can carry weight, and they can move in coordination or through routed networks. And they can navigate through a complex reality. This is the state of art of this kind of thing is not talked about publicly, but these are things that are from YouTube that are easy to find. So here's building a structure of mass with multiple autonomous vehicles, building the structure. And you'll notice them flying over the audience with bricks, so the audience is relatively confident they're not going to get dropped on their head. So these types of extensions of this can be, well, how could you deliver those bricks as packages? What if that brick were a taco? What if it were a pizza? What if it were a book? And how could these be moved around the world? And these things are getting smarter. Yeah. So these aren't theoretical. It's actually becoming practical, and the ability for them to move things in weight and time and distance and cost and smartness is improving. And then it becomes an information problem. Is it easier to move something by walking, by bike messenger, by vehicle like this, by helicopter, and so forth, or is it easier to make it over there? So in the router problem, the humans hybrid biological router is humans and electronic switchboard. The FedEx central hub equivalent is humans at a package switchboard, which are more or less like the phones were 30 years ago, which is the packages come into central locations. The computers do a lot, but they don't do all of it yet. It's just a matter of time. So if the decision is made that it is easier to make the thing at the other side, then it becomes an information problem, which is virtual matter instead of transported matter. So I'll just briefly, this concept of 3D matter is an accelerating area that I'll just touch on very briefly, but scanning something here and then modeming it somewhere else to be manufactured elsewhere is becoming increasingly practical for regular matter, and of more interest is biology, where in synthetic biology is how do you take something that's alive here, turn it from life into data, and the data you can move at the speed of light, and how do you turn it back into life? So computers are programmed with ones and zeros in software that runs on computers. Biology is programmed in DNA, which is a 4-base code that runs in cells, which are like computers. Now, the Internet of living things can be moving information about the living things or the living things themselves around a routed network, but you can start with a living creature here, sequence it, send the information to another location, for example Mars, resynthesize it, and it will reproduce itself. So the process of synthetic biology, each of these technologies is an exponential technology, whether it's robotics, reading DNA, writing DNA, programming it, growing it, and so forth. But it's becoming from a manual process of breeding, which we've been doing for 10,000 years, to an electronic information technology, which expands exponentially. A big missing piece of this is how do you program the life? So this is another project from last year that's become a company genome compiler, which is the programming tools to program in DNA. And there's one person in the room who's had the insight to invest in both of this company and another one that I'll mention in advance of them even being known to the public.
Yeah,
right. So this is solving a problem of old manufacturing, going from petroleum-based products to the kinds of things people want, supplanting that with biological-based manufacturings, which use basically biomass and sugars to make the things we want. So a plant, or a factory plant, may actually be a plant instead of a traditional factory, where the DNA has been substituted in these cases. So you can make DNA with laser printers from the programming, and I'll just show you a quick, this is first time this week.
This is the ejector. Here is
This is the first DNA laser printer.
Here's the DNA plate. Here's the collector plate.
What is it?
And here's the. Can you show the video of the blasting?
Yeah.
Play it. Yeah. Now it's there.
No, now it's there.
Now it's there. No, it isn't.
Is it transporting DNA or making
there.
physical DNA?
It's physically making DNA with laser blasts at the molecular level.
Wow.
So that was recorded this week, and first time it's ever been seen publicly.
Is that out of Singularity?
What's that?
Was that out of Singularity?
That's a company called Cambrian Genomics, which is brand new, which is making a DNA laser printer that prints the DNA coming from the software built by a genome compiler. And that DNA is assembled by the laser printer into the form of a virus that is like the floppy disk of biology that injects it into the cell that runs the program in the cell. This is both reading and writing DNA is getting cheaper exponentially. The ability to make DNA both on the laser printers and in software is increasing exponentially. We're moving from bacteria to yeast, which is about 10 million base pairs. A human is about 3 billion base pair letters of DNA, which is about the same as a movie. So our DNA, in terms of data, is about the same as a movie.
Yeah, but give me an estimate then, based upon that chart. That's Star Trek. You're looking at what type of time parameter if you're not at a Moore's Law rate, you're at a new...
Well, yeast, it hasn't been published publicly, but yeast will likely be published this year, full genomes constructed in yeast. Human chromosomes, individual human chromosomes aren't far behind, and then full humans aren't far behind that.
Not far behind means what?
Well, it gets into...
50 years, 100 years?
No, a few years.
A few years?
Yeah, a couple years.
Wow.
So
makes the whole idea of dating sites change, doesn't it?
Yeah. You can specify what you want. So you can send these to industrial factories of this sort, but you can print the DNA, put it on a piece of paper, put it in a FedEx envelope, or put it in a packet of yeast, and FedEx it to anybody who can then turn it into home brew in a real garage with real home brew, but brewing beer that is made with yeast that's had its DNA modified to make something we want. And that can scale up, or it's sort of old school. So it comes out essentially through the process coming out as beer that has a different function. And so here's an application of why this is useful today. So right now there's a chemical called Squalane that's used in cosmetics. And we're killing biology to get it. It's basically harvested from the livers of sharks in order to extract a little bit of oil. that is used as a skin lotion and a lubricant. And so you can either harvest it this way, and the world's population of sharks is being depleted because of this and shark fin soup. And you can just take the DNA from one shark and reprogram the yeast to also have that piece of shark DNA that makes that particular molecule, run it through the synthetic biology process, and then brew beer with that yeast. And that beer will actually produce that squalane molecule, which will float to the top. You can scoop it off and sell it as a very expensive cosmetic. And the DNA sequencing is also getting simpler and cheaper.
So let's say we have 2 minutes left.
Yeah, I got 2 slides left. So the take home on synthetic biology is read and write, and you can reprogram it along the way. The concept of biology as matter or moving matter from place to place. Here's Earth with all the satellites and junk that we've put up there, sort of a disequilibrium. And the internet is something that's both expanding outward but also focusing inward, in that people can be at a less energetic state focusing inward on the internet. Now, of course, if you want to move things from Earth, which has a limited lifespan, to other planets as a backup, it's a lot better to take the information here, modem it to the place you want it to grow, like Mars, and let it grow there, than to try and send it physically. I'll skip over the meditation part. So NASA's plan for how to colonize Mars, how to feed people, build the fuels and oxygen and process things and so forth. Here's some of the synthetic biology programs, not just for Mars, for long-term space flights. So if Kepler does find some other planets, there's thinking going on about how we would actually send a 1,000-year mission to one. So as people grow exponentially, the problems are actually getting exponentially easier to solve, and so there's a lot of other kind of problems that can be solved this way. I've just talked about biology and transportation. This is what we cover at Singularity. That's it.
Hey. I like that. He wants you. He does not give me your email address. He's not giving you his phone number. It's his Facebook. And I have to tell you, following Reese on Facebook, it's awesome because there's so many things that he just compiles on a regular basis. Great commentary. You find great finds. And I highly recommend you adding Reese. Who's Reese? Just Reese Jones, not one. Who's that person?
Well, I'm number 1. There's
oh, who's 0? So when's the next semester of Singularity University?
We're starting actually a week from now. We're starting our summer program, which is the 10-week program starting on Monday the 18th. That has just 80 people on the NASA campus in Silicon Valley, and this year we had over 3,000 applicants from over 100 countries. Many of them came through contests that we're now running contests in.
Governments actually help put on the contests.
Yeah, so we have like China, India, Brazil, and so forth, where India has to pick one person from the billion people in India to send, all expenses paid. So most of the people come on scholarship, so if you want to sponsor people, that's always welcome.
And the people that come have to create a project that affects 1 billion people in a decade.
Yes, as a team. They don't have to do it themselves. We gather teams together.
Does Singularity somehow recoup any equity in these ideas?
No, people can go do with them what they want. If some of the companies decide to become Singularity companies and contribute a small portion of their startup equity to Singularity University, and the faculty, staff, and team helps the company get its act together, get funded, grow. And
with the few billionaires we have in the room, can they invest in some of these companies?
Yeah, you can actually invest soon in Singularity University itself, and then several of the companies mentioned are brand new startups, in some sense first time publicly shown right here, that are at various early stages of funding.
Very cool. And last question. Your big favorite sci-fi movie of all time, what is it?
2001.
1, not 11.
Yes.
Okay, 2001. No aliens, no Prometheus.
2001 is aliens.
Just want to make sure.
That iPhone by the bed.
I find so.
It's an alien.
In the monolith.
It's just not
What's the monolith? What is it?
It's life.
It's life.
Life is information in motion.
Thank you very much, Reese.